Let's now take a look at the international newspapers, and I'm joined by Elena Casas. Hello, Elena. What are the papers then making of what's expected to be the biggest strike in the UK in decades?
Hello, Claire. Let's start on the right with the Mail. Still think it's a good idea to strike? Its front page asks, saying that after George Osborne's pretty terrifying warnings yesterday after the state of the British economy, we certainly can't afford to pay for public sector pensions. The Mail thinks their editorial says the private sector can no longer afford to indulge state workers, who they say have got away with murder for too long. They say European countries need to start thinking about competing with China, and as a result need to start cutting their welfare states. The Times is also pretty happy with George Osborne after his really quite tough speech yesterday. He's looking very stern on their front cover under the headline Osborne Strikes First, and their editorial says that they're proud of him for not being afraid to give voters the worst possible news. They say he's of course antagonised the public sector unions by announcing a 1% pay cut for public sector workers the day before they go out on that big strike. But they, according to the Times, that's a good thing. They salute his political courage, they say. But they do have a bit of criticism there for George Osborne. They say he could do with a bit more vision to try and think of a more imaginative way to try and get Britain out of recession. And
I imagine the left-leaning papers are even harsher than that.
Absolutely. The Guardian, same headline, Osborne strikes again, but they follow that up with public sector to foot bill, and they call this a nakedly regressive package of measures that he announced on their front page. They say the government's message that we're all in it together grows ever more hollow. They say by cutting public sector pay and freezing working tax credits, which some of the worst off people in Britain rely on, and not even touching the 10% top edge of the income bracket, they're just making it more and more regressive and unfair. If we have a look at Polly Toynbee's column in the same paper, she says Osborne has torn the veil from the nasty party with this declaration of class war. She says the government has blatantly declared itself for the few against the many, and also points out it's a budget rather that targets women, who are 73% of public sector workers. The Independent, as you might expect, takes a similar tone on their front page. They've got more job cuts, more pain and more public borrowing. George Osborne wants more as a headline, and inside they've been talking to some of the public sector workers who are going out on strike today, from teachers, a head teacher who says that his staff are going to lose £5 million worth of pensions that they've already accrued, to a care worker whose salary has been cut from £21,000 a year to £14,000. So there's a lot of very angry people in Britain, the paper is saying.
Another UK story we're looking at today is some of the embassy staff being withdrawn from Tehran, and the Independent is looking at how things went so bad, just got to this point, this terrible situation now between the strained relations between Iran and the UK.
Yes, the paper explains the relationship between Iran and the UK has been really stretched for a long time. They say the young people who marched into their embassy yesterday are clearly proxies for the regime, which has been deliberately stirring up anti-British sentiment among Iranian young people. That's what the paper thinks anyway. They say the regime has gone back over all sorts of old incidents, like a coup in 1953 where Britain contributed to try and stir up that anger.
And what's the latest on the phone hacking scandal?
Well, there's some strong headlines around today after a former News of the World journalist Paul McMullen gave some quite shocking testimony to the Leveson inquiry into ethics yesterday. Privacy is for pedos. You see that headline at the Huffington Post. He actually said that yesterday. He told the inquiry that only paedophiles needed privacy. The Guardian has got some more quite shocking, really, quotes from him yesterday. He said that car chases of celebrities were fun until Diana died, and then he thought it was a shame you couldn't do them anymore. He says that Andy Coulson and Rebecca Brooks, the former editors, knew all about it, and he called them the scum of journalists for allowing their journalists to take the rap for those crimes, which he reckons they knew everything about. But in the Guardian's analysis, actually, some of their media correspondents say it might be a good thing that the tabloids' worst possible practice has been defended publicly like this. They point out that tabloids only care about their bottom line. That was the centre, if you like, of McMullen's evidence, that there was what he called a bullying atmosphere in the newsroom. But the Guardian says as long as tabloids need to make money, we won't be able to rein in their behaviour.
Thank you very much, Elena Casas, for that look at the international newspapers. Now, before we go, let's see what the financial markets are doing. European stocks have opened well down just hours after an inconclusive Eurozone summit that left the bailout fund well short of its target lending capacity of €1 trillion. The FTSE, DAX and CAC 40, as you can see, they're all opened around 1% down, with Milan's FTSE MIB more than 0.5% off. Similar picture across Asia, with Hong Kong's Hang Seng ending the trading session 1.5% down. The Nikkei managed to scale back its losses, but it was still 0.5% off at the close. And there were steeper losses in Shanghai, down nearly 3.5%. And that's it for that look at the markets. That's it from me. Stuart Norval will have all the latest headlines for you in just a few minutes. Do stay tuned.